So you saw the threat as becoming a conflict between people who were trying to find the truth about these events that had been lied to, their false flag attacks. Okay, so what happened when you presented these to your officer?
Well, it certainly didn't go down very well. I took a couple of peer officers in the room and for the first time alerted management to this. And the doors were quickly shut.
So you wanted a couple of witnesses in there because you felt you said you were quite worried at that point.
When I first put my head above the parapet, which was on the 6th of July, it was with some understandable trepidation that I did this. And at this stage, I wanted somebody to see, other than the manager, to see this. But they were quickly moved out of the office, and I had a one-to-one with the director of intelligence, and we discussed this in an amicable way. But there was pressure on me to immediately go to occupational health because of of a perception that I was feeling unwell.
Right, so this one officer tried to make out that there was something wrong with your mental state. So is that what he was trying to say?
Possibly. I don't know exactly why they were. I can only speculate as to why they wanted me to go to occupational health. They would clearly say it was for my welfare. They would clearly say they were worried about me. In actual fact, I'd never felt better or stronger, and I was fine at work. There was no sickness issues or anything like that. Clearly, I was doing something that was required me to, in a way, stick my head above the parapet. And doing it for the first time, there was some understandable trepidation, which they would have seen. But this was such a big issue. So
you then refused to go to the occupational, or did you go?
I declined. I made it clear that I didn't think there was anything wrong with me. I didn't feel unwell. I felt perfectly fine. And I had just brought them to attention something exceptionally serious that I needed to alert them on.
Now, they then told you to take a couple of days off.
No, not exactly. What happened was that the assignment was due on the 8th of July.
Yes.
And they wanted to make sure that I could deliver on the assignment to a board meeting that was taking place on the 8th of July. So their first primary concern seemed to be to make sure everything stayed on track for that.
Yes.
So the assignment that I was tasked to do, the Strategic Threat Assessment Matrix, they still wanted out. But they wanted it out in such a way that the alert that I'd given them had to be ignored. It couldn't be considered.
Right. Okay.
And that the terrorist threat still had to be consistent with the government narrative, i.e. the terrorist threat had to remain Islamic terrorism.
Yeah. Right. Now, at that point, is that when they then said, look, go away for a few days and write a report?
No, ironically, 5 years to the day, 7th of July, my other manager, a detective chief inspector, spent the day with me just to make sure that everything was on track for delivery of the product, the assignment. So we worked together. Right. Still of a mind that I was going to hand over a strategic threat assessment matrix that would actually be complicit in what I now believe to be a lie.
Right.
I felt sick as I was going through my work because all of a sudden I'd had that paradigm shift whereby I could not, in my conscience, go along with this.
Yeah.
But my managers didn't seem at all concerned. They just wanted that product delivered for the Intelligence Strategy Board and business could carry on as normal.
Yeah.
They didn't want me to alert them to this issue, or that's how it appeared. And for the one day and one day only, that was the 7th of July.
Last year, 2010.
I went along with that and I was all prepared to deliver on the 8th of July the full strategic assessment in accordance with what they want. Right. But in my mind, it would have to go along with go with the lie. When I went home on the evening of the 7th of 7, a defining moment, my valley of decision came to me that evening.
Right.
And I knew, conscience-wise, with the faith I have, I could not, in all honesty, go in and hand over my assignment, because to my mind, that would have made me complicit in the monstrous tyranny that had occurred in 9/11 and 7/7, because I would have been supporting the lie knowingly, given what I was now convinced was a monstrous lie, and conscience would not allow me to do that.
Okay then, Tony, well, we're going to go for a short break. It's very powerful stuff, and we'll find out after this break what happened to you next. I'm talking with Tony Farrell, who is an ex-principal intelligence analyst for South Yorkshire Police, and he's been talking about a terror threat assessment that you had been assigned to author or prepare. Now, you went home on the evening of the 7th of July, and you thought, no, I'm not going to do the report in the way that they want me to. I'm going to say it how I believe it is.
That's right.
So what happened when you went on the 8th to deliver your report to the police?
Well, having sweated all that evening on the 7th of 7th, I got up extra early and went into work really early, and resolved in my own mind to make my stance. I knew full well that they wouldn't accept a strategic threat assessment that had narrative in that was incriminated internally in any sense, shape or form. So I felt this is an absurd situation. So what I did was alert management to my stance in such a way that would shock them. I produced a front sheet of a strategic threat assessment matrix model, a simplified model of the strategic threat, that was absurd looking, that really zoomed in on two things and two things alone, and that was the threat from terrorism and the truth behind 9/11 and the truth behind 7/7, with all other domains of criminality relegated to no importance whatsoever, because I thought this was the single most important issue to deal with when we're talking in terms of a strategic threat, which this was what it was. So
the way that the information is presented is as a matrix. So there's the different types of threat and what is likely to happen, or the outcomes of those threats, and you've just basically filled it in. I mean, I've got them here saying 100%, 100%, 100% is the threat of internal terrorism or internal tyranny. So you present this and what happened then?
Well, it shocked. It had the effect. My manager clearly looked disconcerted and, pleaded with me, Tony, we can't do business like this. Which I could understand. We couldn't do business like this, but neither could I be doing business which would render me complicit in a lie.
I mean, so you would have been happy if it allowed you to put it in, along with perhaps other threats in there as well, but you just wanted that stated as a threat.
I would have been happy if management would have actually shown some understanding on this issue in terms of, I wanted some, I wasn't naive enough that this could go out in a form that said the threat was from internal tyranny. But I wanted to alert management to that very fact, and I offered to provide them with a full report that would justify why I was of the opinion that the threat was internally. Now,
I mean, I guess they could have compromised, I suppose. They could have said, okay, we'll let you put it in as long as you say that these people are deluded, that they're a threat. It's a threat that these people think there was false flag, but...
Well, I didn't... No, I'd weighed up which story I believed, and on balance, I was totally persuaded, as far as, almost as near certain as you can be, that the government versions of both 9/11, the respective government versions of 9/11 and 7/7 were becoming so ridiculous, surrendered and totally unreliable, and that, whilst I don't know exactly how everything happened, there were far more plausible hypotheses out there that explained the situation and completely debunked the government stories. And that was being covered up now, and I couldn't, in my conscience, I couldn't do anything that would countenance the perpetuation of that lie.
So then, on the 8th, you're there, you've presented these two matrices to this officer, and you thought you were then going to go and present this to the board? No,
definitely not. I knew that the information I presented to them would have no utility in a formal-looking strategic threat assessment. So basically, the plan to get to the board meeting that afternoon was now derailed. I knew that, and I wasn't going to hand over the other work I'd done, because it would be totally misleading of me to have done so. It would mislead on the threat, and I was not prepared to bear false witness. And that is simply in accordance with their own professional standards for honesty and integrity.
Yes.
So, as well as my faith about not breaking a ninth commandment of thou shalt not bear false witness on somebody, and I would have had to have done that to complete it to their satisfaction, I was not prepared either to breach the very own professional standards about honesty and integrity.
So what happened then, Tony?
Well, clearly at that stage they were disappointed that they were going to miss a deadline for the board meeting. But I had already planned after this to take 3 weeks annual leave. That was scheduled in and planned. So they asked me to explain, would I go home and put together a report to explain my situation, to explain my stance, why I did what I did. And I had to turn that round within a few days. So obviously, in a state of mind whereby I'd now put my head above the parapet, I now had to explain myself. So I put together a report specifically for my Director of Intelligence, explaining why I felt compelled to make my stance in the way I did, in terms of my role as a principal intelligence analyst, my role as a Christian, my role as just an ordinary citizen, and an analyst. So from a number of perspectives, all this was giving me a problem. It was giving the organisation a problem and a dilemma. So I put my own self-assessment down for the purposes of management, for them to consider what they should do with this situation.
And this document that you drew up while you were off work, it's in tabular form, and it says viewpoint held by the principal analyst and the probability assessment. So you list various factors involved in 9/11 and 7/7, and you give out your probability of that being true.
That's right.
And these are all like 0.99, 0.95, 0.95, 0.90. Yeah.
This was my personal report. On my reasons for doing what I did, and I am using open source information to put a probability assessment on a hypothesis that have come up, have been correct.
Right.
So whilst I can't say that I was absolutely certain of these things happening the way I did, I made some strategic inferences as to what was going on, such as the New World Order with its satanic ideology, such as the false flag operations of 9/11 and 7/7, and the rationale and the reason behind those, which touched on the wars, the immoral wars that all countries were perpetrating in Afghanistan and Iraq under false colours. Okay.
Now, this was submitted on the 12th of July, this report, is that right?
That's correct.
And then did you get any feedback from that?
The report wasn't read in front of me by my manager. I was asked really to go on annual leave and leave the office. Privileges were withdrawn at that stage, so that clearly at that stage management had concerns about what I was raising and about why I was raising these. Now, the only thing that happened before I went off, the Director of Intelligence did pop his head round the corner just with a thumbs up sign to say that he found the report acceptable for the purposes he needed that report for.
So he put his thumbs up to kind of say, yes, this is what we wanted. That seems a strange... Why do you think he put his thumb up?
Well, he wanted... He clearly, the police understandably wanted to know exactly why I felt so compelled to make the stance I did. Because they had to explain away the fact that an important strategic board meeting
had been cancelled.
Had been not cancelled, but an important assignment had not been delivered.
Right.
So I had to explain. I had some explaining to do,
and
that was the report that did it. It was a report that held no punches. I told them as it was, warts and all, and that was the report that was the report that ultimately led to my dismissal. I then went on annual leave for 3 weeks, with one-to-one contact from a detective chief inspector. Subsequently, that morphed into gardening leave, almost like suspension.